This is very big. I'm about to make another prediction for you, and I do not believe that I'm going to be the only person making this prediction. I might be the first. I've been looking on the internet. I have not seen it yet. But there's no way that I'm going to be the only person making this prediction. The biggest newsworthy story that I heard today is that General Motors, in other words, you and me, we just acquired Americredit for a premium over the stock price so that General Motors dealerships can have their own in-house subprime lending bank. So let me go ahead and cut right to the chase. There's no need to beat around the bush. General Motors has now acquired all of the necessary pieces to the puzzle for them to become the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac of the automobile industry. It just happened today. And all the important details that you need to know, I hope I don't miss anything important on this story, but make a long story short, if you have a 300 beacon score, if you are a credit bandit and you have never paid a credit card bill, if you have had 3 bankruptcies, 2 automobile repossessions, and a foreclosure, you will now be able to walk into any General Motors dealership and buy the car of your dreams because it will be subsidized by me, by all of the taxpayers. There's no longer any need for Americredit to have any accountability or any scrutiny as to the types of individuals that they are giving loans to for automobiles, because you and I will be paying in case that borrower defaults, just like with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Remember, the American taxpayer owns 61% of General Motors. 61%. How did General Motors acquire Americredit? Newsflash, everybody. Cash money. Cash money. A company that was, a year and a half ago, $50 billion in debt. They just dropped $3.5 billion in cash to buy a subprime lender. Now, guess what? Guess what? They did not just buy Americredit, the subprime lender. Guess what? Here's the part you're going to love, folks. Here's the part you're going to love. This is just like getting married. It's exactly like getting married. You're not just marrying the woman. You're not just marrying the man. You're marrying all of their outstanding debts as well. And whatever they just paid for $3.5 billion to Americredit, Americredit just generated $900 million in loans in the last quarter to subprime borrowers, to people that don't pay their bills. How much of that paper do you think is bad paper? So we didn't just blow $3.5 billion of taxpayer money. Who knows how much bad paper that Americredit generated over the last 2, 3, 4 years, and that are going to be coming due or possibly going into repossession over the next 2 quarters, 3 quarters, 5 years, 10 years. We're on the hook for it now, the American taxpayer. How does this happen? Or do you have to ask yourself, was this the plan all along? Was it the plan all along? You don't just hear it on the Marcus Wagner show. You hear it on every conservative talk radio show. Obama is beholden first and foremost to the unions. Do you think that General Motors, being able to sell a bunch of cars that General Motors will not be required to pay for, that you and I will be required to pay for, to keep union employees in a job, do you think that will make the unions happy? Probably make the unions pretty happy, won't it? I have the Detroit automaker says it's going to pay $3.5 billion. Let's see. The GM CEO says that the deal is going to make General Motors more competitive in auto financing. I thought General Motors sold cars. I guess not. Apparently they're in auto financing now as well. Wait a minute, that's right. They were in auto financing, and that arm of their business went bankrupt also. That's right. That was GMAC. And that cost the taxpayers another 10 to 20 billion if I recall correctly. But hey, just because it didn't work out the first time around, no need not to try it again, especially now that you're spending taxpayer dollars, spending somebody else's money. Hey, let's try this again, right? So here we go. Oh, GM execs said that their sales have been hurt by a lack of subprime and lease financing. Let me tell you, folks, a little secret here. What GM executives said about their sales being hurt by a lack of subprime and lease financing, what they just said there, folks, is a lie. 100% lie. Now, this is coming from somebody that knows something a little bit about the auto business. Every auto dealership that you go into has forged agreements with a host of different subprime lenders. There is not one General Motors dealership on this entire continent that doesn't have access to multiple subprime lenders. All right? But the difference is, here's the difference. In case I have not made it clear enough already, let me tell you the big difference. If I'm a General Motors dealer and I have agreements with 5 different subprime lenders, right? I may have a buyer come in with a 300 beacon score, in other words, a credit bandit that has never paid anybody. I might have that person come in and I say, well, I got 5 agreements with 5 different subprime lenders that I can send this loan out to, and hopefully one of them will bite on it, right? Keep in mind, the theoretical buyer has a 300 beacon score and has never paid anybody. So I take this loan and I fire it off to all 5 lenders and see who gives me the best deal on it, right? And I'm hoping, well, maybe lender 1 will give me a 30% interest rate. Lender 2 will give me a 20% interest rate. Lender 3 will give me a 13% interest rate. Whatever. What if I send it off to all 5 dealers and all 5 of them reject it? What does that mean? It means that those 5 banks that rejected that loan from that buyer said, this is not a good loan. This guy is not going to pay off this loan. How do we know that? Because we are a bank. We have been, this is our business. And we can tell by his beacon score and his credit history that he has no intentions of paying off this loan. We will not give this guy a loan. But now, the new scenario wherein General Motors, example General Motors dealership A, already has agreements with 5 subprime lenders, but they've all said, we're not touching this guy with a 10-foot pole. But now General Motors has an in-house subprime lender. Keep in mind, General Motors is 61% owned by the taxpayers. In other words, General Motors will get their money, but if, like the 5 subprime lenders said, this guy has no intentions of paying off his loan, and those 5 subprime lenders were right, and General Motors allows you, the taxpayer, to back up this worthless piece of paper, this worthless loan, and in fact the guy does not pay off the loan, who's on the hook for it? General Motors? Wrong answer. We are the taxpayers. We are. Because the 5 banks that do not have federal bailout money, that are not owned by the United States government, knew that it wasn't a good loan. These are the loans that the General Motors executives are talking about when they say that their sales have been hurt by a lack of subprime lease and financing. They are lying. Their sales have not been hurt by a lack of subprime lease and financing. What they are hoping for is to generate sales at the expense of the American taxpayer. That's what they are hoping to do. The unions will benefit. General Motors, the corporation, and the executives will benefit. And once again, you and I, the taxpayer,